Hello there and welcome to another Wine Steward video. Thank you for watching these things. I would like to represent to you, first of all, our wine of the week. And as you can tell by the lineup of 4 bottles up here, wines of the week is more accurate. We're getting plural on you. What you do see, however, is a theme, right? Without being able to read these labels necessarily, you can tell all of these are from the same producer. These are all made by a dude named Yves Falmet. Yves Falmet has a winery called Terre Falmet. That means basically the land of him. He deserves to name it after himself based on how obsessed he is with his farming. So yes, he does grow his grapes and renders his grapes into these beautiful wines, among others. But these are the 4 that we've just brought aboard. And in fact, we poured the whole lineup last night down at Sidetrack Bar and Grill. So they got their debut there. Eric Staffenegger, their importer, was there to represent the wines. Eric Staffenegger, as German as the name sounds, is actually a really fun, jovial Frenchman. And you got to meet him sometime. I'm sure we'll have him at the wine bar. He lives right over in Oakland. And he would happily visit the wine bar in order to show these wines in person, as he did last night. These wines are going to get a lot of exposure for several reasons. They're going to get exposure right now for a particular reason or two. Let's tell you what they are. Again, the producer name is Terre Falmet. Terre Falmet, the land of Monsieur Yves Falmet. And what is the most important thing to me about good wine? Source, where it's from. I think that's the main determiner of what it's going to taste like and how good it's going to be. We're not going to Bordeaux, France. We're not going to Burgundy, nor to the Rhone, though these varieties do look a little bit Rhone-ish, don't they, if you can read them. We are going to a less well-known area that I have yet to haunt. I really want to traverse the bottom of France, especially over where it's almost becoming Spain, and that's where we're going with these wines. These wines from Terre Falmet are from the precise location of Saint-Chinian, next door neighbors to Fitou and Corbière and Miniavois, other places that you may not be fully aware of because they're still kind of backwater locations. The big general area is known as the Languedoc. In the ancient Aquitaine language, that actually means the language of yes, Languedoc. Did you know that? Stupid fun fact you don't really need to know, but you need to know these wines. If you like wines from the Rhone Valley, which would be well east of here, but similarly Mediterranean influenced. We're 20 miles away from the Mediterranean here, by the way, in southwest France. I'm going to keep harping on location in the land of Saint-Chinian. If you like Rhone wines, you will identify with these. I'm identifying with them because I do like Rhone wines. We've developed a following for such, and I also believe that these varieties really deserve to be exploited here in my own little Livermore Valley wine appellation. And there's not a lot being done with these, except perhaps in my backyard and a few other places. So let's tell you what these are, shall we? The first one is Cinsault. This, in fact, is not growing in my backyard yet. Cinsault from Terre Falmet is one of the few examples of varietal Cinsault that you'll ever get to try. It's really cool to know what this grape does, and frankly, you don't normally want to have varietal Cinsault because it's going to be wimpy. In fact, so wimpy that it's a main component of Provence Rosé. It typically makes a light red. And in fact, they're using it now in Châteauneuf-du-Pape as a more and more growing ingredient of, you can use 13 different grape varieties in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and Cinsault is one of them. Used to see none, and people started to throw a little bit in, and now you're seeing, 5 or 10% Cinsault added to Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Why? For alleviation, if that's a word, to actually brighten and lighten big 15.5% alcohol Châteauneuf-du-Papes just a little bit. Add some vibrancy to those wines with Cinsault. Well, here's a chance to try Cinsault all by itself. Very, very successful. Why? Because the irrigation is non-existent. The vines are older. The site especially is amazing. Whereas many vines in the Languedoc region are grown on the flats, Yves Falmet has this beautiful property on a hill. And what you get on a hill, therefore, is erosion. You have soils that are more spare because all the fertile, nutritious soil slid downhill over the years. And so you've got grapes growing more in stone than in what we would call dirt or soil. And so that makes the vine struggle. We've heard about vines that struggle giving you a better product. That's why we can have a varietal Cinsault. Yeah, no additions were made to this wine. It's 100% Cinsault, a nice opportunity. I know I'm going on about Cinsault, so let me now go on about Carignan. I've got 20 Carignan vines in the backyard, among Grenache and Syrah and Mourvedre, Muscat, and 1 or 2 Tannat vines as well. But as you can tell, I'm a big believer in the idea of the south of France as it pertains to Livermore. I think our Livermore Valley ought to be working with some Carignan. I might, in fact, have the only Carignan in the Livermore Valley right now, and that's just too damn bad. What does Carignan do to a blend? It gives it darkness, and it gives it acidity, it gives it structure, it gives it a sense of perhaps deep boysenberry fruit, along with maybe dry, unsweetened chocolate. And Carignan is a really cool grape, but it really normally shouldn't be left to its own devices. In other words, be done as a varietal. This is in fact 100% Carignan. That is freaking delicious. Last night it sold as well as its peers here in this lineup from Terre Falmet. So Carignan as a varietal is next. A great grape that deserves to be in our Rhone blends here in Livermore and over there in France. So Carignan as a varietal. The next wine is our old friend, or at least my old friend, Mourvedre. Mourvedre, you can pronounce that last syllable. You can say Mourvedre. The French would gasp or breathe that final syllable. They would say something like Mourvedre. Now I'm thirsty. This is the Carignan, by the way. Look at that color. This is the Carignan from Terre Falmet. And that over there is 100% Mourvedre. Yet another member of the quartet comprising our wines of the week from Terre Falmet. Now the final wine, finally, is a blend of Mourvedre and Syrah. And then you get to, have to pay up a little bit. All of these wines are 21 bucks, and then we go up to the $30 level with that final wine. But with this wine, all of a sudden you've left varietal precision behind, and you've got the soul of the South, really, the south of France, in that it is, for whatever reason, it achieves more of the Garrigue effect in there. That south of France, that mysterious south of France quality that is really probably imposes itself on the wine by the herbs, the local herbs, the Mediterranean scrub, if you will. That Garrigue is all of that stuff blowing around in the Mistral wind and getting onto the grapes. Could be thyme, lavender, those kinds of things. Those resinous herbs that grow naturally out there. They fly around in the Mistral wind and get into that wine in particular. So that's a blend from Terre Falmet. The wines of the week, not too efficiently discussed, but the producer, his location, Saint-Chinian, and these grape varieties as they pertain to his land and to the Livermore Valley, which does resemble very much the south of France, in my opinion. Mediterranean affected. That site is 20 miles away from the Mediterranean. It does make itself felt, but the days do get damn hot. Then they cool down at night. Sound familiar? We're not going to go too much further with the video, but I do want to tell you about a couple of things that are on our wine bar menu this week. First of all, this is a wine that should have been shown last week at our Santa Barbara County or Sideways Country event, and we just ran out of room. But this is a beautiful Chardonnay from Côtière. Côtière, a name that sounds very French, doesn't it? Whereas the grapes come, I believe, from Santa Maria Valley and Los Alamos, two sub-regions of Santa Barbara County. And since we weren't able to squeeze it onto the lineup of the Sideways Country event, we're putting it on the wine bar now. A really beautiful Chardonnay that the style, I would call it, is a fence straddling style. There is generosity and refreshment. There's good acidity and fruit This is fully ripe wine, but it's not buttery oaky necessarily. It certainly had a little bit of a wood visit, but wood is not the message. The beautiful fruit and place is. And from this area, so close to the Pacific Ocean, again, we're talking about sea or water adjacency. That is definitely a benefit for this, the quality of this wine, where you get vibrancy and generosity of fruit. Really nice wine from Côtier. That is offered by the glass on our wine bar menu this week. Very nice stuff. Now let's tell you about a white wine that is in the white flight. And in fact, all 5 wines in this week's refreshing flight, I have to call it the refreshing flight, not the white flight, because one of the wines is a dry rosé. They're all from France. How cool. As you can tell, I like French wine. But I think you will all like this wine, especially on a hot day out here. You know, it's warming up, and I think it's very appropriate to start putting some bottles of this into the fridge. This is a white Bordeaux. Bordeaux is the location, right? When we say white Bordeaux, we're not talking about a grape. We're talking about a place called Bordeaux, a very big place on the west side of France, adjacent to the Atlantic Ocean. We know red Bordeaux very well, perhaps, as being usually comprised of Cabernet and or Merlot and or Cab Franc, Malbec, and so on. Those are the Bordeaux varieties as it pertains to red wine. But here is a white. And what would we expect to have from a white Bordeaux? Typically, Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon often get together in a white Bordeaux. A Bordeaux Blanc will often have a third player. There's actually a few other things that are permitted, but more typically, you see no more than 3 grapes represented. So this wine, in fact, this Sainte-Marie, Cuvée Sainte-Marie, or Chateau Sainte-Marie, is made of Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and Muscadelle. Muscadelle, which has nothing to do with Muscat. This is a dry white, vibrant. I believe it never saw barrels. It's very clean and lively. It's not as complex as Bordeaux that you would spend another $10 or $20 for, that would see French oak and be enlarged by that experience. It's meant to be refreshing and go with raw oysters and hot sunny days on the patio. That's what this wine from Sainte-Marie is for. Beautiful wine. I'll tell you about one more. How about that? And announce that your wine club wines are ready to pick up. Not yet, but maybe one day. I think we'll have them ready for you by Friday afternoon. There's a fun celebration of the release of a particular wine that's very dear to me that will be involved in the May Wine Club lineup. But we'll get to that. Maybe we'll announce that as the wine of the week next week. Are you intrigued? Be intrigued by this. This is a delicious wine from Mendoza, Argentina, and it is going to be a blend of 3 grapes. Now, you would anticipate having Malbec from Argentina, and your anticipation would be fulfilled by the fact that this is mainly Malbec, but it's got 2 other players. One is Petit Verdot, another Bordeaux grape. As you know, Malbec is a Bordeaux grape originally, and so is Petit Verdot. I shouldn't say originally, because Malbec probably came from further south, but in France. Whatever. We know it best as a Bordeaux variety, right? So Malbec, oh man, I'm going on and on. Malbec is the main thing going on here, but this wine is helped by perhaps the Petit Verdot with maybe color and firmness. But what's really given this wine some nice joy and smoothness and roundness and rosy perfume, like a very dark rosiness happens, is because of Bonarda. Bonarda is, I think, still Argentina's second most planted grape. But we just don't talk about Bonarda enough. Bonarda is kind of the yin or the yang to Malbec's yang. The yang to Malbec's yin. Get that straight. In that it feminizes Malbec a little bit, if I can say that. I don't know if we can say that anymore, but I think Bonarda does smooth out Malbec. The Bonarda does, and rounds it, gives it curves, there we go, and fragrance, perfumey fragrance. And this wine from Catena, I'm sure you've heard of that brand. It's probably one of the most important producers. Laura Catena is in fact a physician up here in San Francisco, and presides over this winery, her namesake winery down in Mendoza, Argentina, Catena. I tasted so many of the high-end Catenas, and then I tasted this, and I thought this was the most effective as far as QPR, quality to price ratio, in that this sells for maybe $22 before your wine club discount. By the way, it's going to the Wine Adventure Wine Club this month, and it's delicious, and it's not as like monolithic as a typical Malbec would be. Blending matters. Nearly every grape out there doesn't mind having some help from another grape. There's a few standalones. Pinot Noir doesn't need help. Syrah doesn't need help usually. But here in this case, I think Malbec can be a little stoic and simple, and it gets beautified by the Bonarda happening here. This is all to say that this is in the wine club, and it's also on the red flight over there. I'm gonna go try it. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whatever you're doing. And we hope to see you soon for the enjoyment of the wines of the week from Terre Formée, and what we're doing on our wine bar, which is fun. And there's a lot of other good stuff down there. So check us out, will you? We miss you.